Have you ever noticed how strange one simple word can feel? 2 letters, 1 syllable. No, it should be one of the easiest words in any language. And yet, for some people, saying it feels almost impossible. The moment the word reaches your lips, your chest tightens, your stomach sinks, your mind immediately begins racing. What if they think I'm selfish? What if I disappoint them? What if they stop liking me? So instead, you say yes, even when you're exhausted, even when you don't have time, even when every part of you is screaming for rest. And then something even stranger happens. You don't feel relieved. You feel trapped. What if the guilt you experience after saying no isn't actually guilt? What if it's something much older, disguising itself as morality? That possibility changes everything. Because most people believe guilt comes from doing something wrong. But psychology suggests another possibility. Sometimes guilt appears, not because you've betrayed someone else, but because you've stopped betraying yourself. That sounds backwards. It should, because almost everything we've been taught about kindness points in the opposite direction. From childhood, we're rewarded for being agreeable, sharing, helping, being polite, being easy. Teachers praise the quiet child. Parents admire the obedient one. Friends appreciate the person who never creates problems. Little by little, a dangerous equation begins forming inside the mind. Love equals compliance. Acceptance equals self-sacrifice. Belonging equals keeping everyone else comfortable. No one says these words directly. They don't have to. The nervous system learns through repetition, not lectures. Imagine a child reaching for something they want. Before they can even explain themselves, they hear, "Don't be selfish." They express frustration. "Be nice." They disagree. "Stop being difficult." At first, these seem like harmless corrections, but the child's brain isn't simply learning manners. It's learning survival. Because for a child, love isn't optional. Connection isn't a luxury. It's survival itself. If expressing your needs repeatedly threatens connection, your nervous system quietly reaches a conclusion. My needs are dangerous. Years pass. The child becomes an adult. The words change. The pattern doesn't. Someone asks for another favor. You already have too much on your plate. You know you should decline. But before you even answer, your body has already decided. Your heartbeat changes. Your breathing becomes shallow. Your muscles tighten. Notice something important. The guilt hasn't appeared yet. The body reacts first. The story comes afterward. Neuroscience has revealed something fascinating about emotional processing. Long before your conscious mind explains what you're feeling, your nervous system has already predicted whether you're safe. And for many people, saying no doesn't feel like setting a boundary. It feels like risking abandonment. That's why the reaction is so intense. Your body isn't responding to today's request. It's responding to years of emotional conditioning. Carl Jung believed every personality develops a social identity designed to gain acceptance. He called it the persona. The persona isn't fake. It's necessary. It helps us function in society. The problem begins when we become so identified with the persona that we forget who exists beneath it. If you've spent your entire life being the helpful one, the reliable one, the nice one, eventually, saying no doesn't simply feel uncomfortable. It feels like betraying your identity. Who am I? If I'm not the person everyone can depend on? That's a terrifying question, because hidden beneath it lies another. If people don't need me, will they still love me? Most people never ask themselves that question consciously. They don't need to. Their behavior answers it every day. They overcommit, overextend, overgive. Not because they enjoy exhaustion, because somewhere deep inside, they're still trying to earn something that should never have required earning. Love. Here's where the mystery becomes even deeper. Why do some people feel guilty after saying no, while others don't? The request may be identical. The relationship may be identical. Yet one person calmly declines. The other spends the next 3 days replaying the conversation in their head. The difference isn't personality. It's perception. One nervous system hears, "They may be disappointed." The other hears, "I may no longer belong." Those are completely different experiences. This is why logic rarely solves the problem. You can tell yourself, It's okay to have boundaries. You can read every self-help book ever written. You can understand healthy relationships intellectually. Yet the moment someone asks something of you, your body still whispers, "Be careful," because biology speaks louder than philosophy, at least in the beginning. This is why guilt often survives long after the beliefs that created it have disappeared. The mind grows. The nervous system takes longer. Ancient philosophers understood something surprisingly similar. The Stoics often wrote about the difference between what belongs to us and what does not. Your choices belong to you. Other people's reactions do not. Simple idea. Incredibly difficult to live, especially when your identity has been built around managing other people's emotions. Think about how much energy that requires. You constantly scan conversations, facial expressions, tone of voice, tiny changes in mood. You become exceptionally good at predicting disappointment, not because you're naturally gifted, because your nervous system believes disappointment is dangerous. Over time, you stop noticing your own emotions altogether. Everyone else's feelings become louder than your own. This is one of the quiet tragedies of chronic people-pleasing. You become deeply connected to everyone, except yourself. And perhaps that's why saying no feels so unnatural. You're not simply declining a request. You're interrupting a survival strategy your mind has practiced for years. But here's the question almost nobody asks. If saying yes always brought peace, why are you so exhausted? That question is uncomfortable because it forces you to consider something your mind has carefully avoided for years. Maybe the constant exhaustion isn't the price of being kind. Maybe it's the price of never allowing yourself to exist alongside your kindness. There's a profound difference. Real generosity expands both people. Self-abandonment slowly empties one to fill the other. From the outside, they often look identical. Only one leads to resentment. Think about resentment for a moment. Very few people wake up one morning feeling resentful. It grows quietly. One unnecessary obligation, one forced smile, one ignored need, one more yes that should have been a no. Individually, they seem insignificant. Together, they become a life. Then one day, something small happens. A friend asks for one more favor. A coworker assumes you'll stay late again. A family member expects you to solve another problem. And suddenly, your reaction surprises even you. Not because the request was unreasonable, because it landed on years of invisible weight. People around you might say, "You're overreacting." But they aren't seeing what you're reacting to. They're seeing the final page of a story that began long ago. Jung believed that whatever remains unconscious eventually seeks expression. If your voice has been buried, it will eventually find another way to speak. Sometimes through irritability, sometimes through anxiety, sometimes through emotional numbness, sometimes through a body that is simply too exhausted to keep pretending. The body has an extraordinary honesty. It often says what the mouth refuses to. Chronic tension, difficulty relaxing, persistent fatigue, the feeling that you're carrying something invisible. These experiences are not always caused by overwork alone. Sometimes they are the cost of living too far away from yourself. This is why learning to say no is about far more than setting boundaries. It is about recovering a relationship with your own inner world. And that recovery begins with an unexpected realization. Guilt is not always a moral compass. Sometimes it is simply the emotional echo of an old survival strategy. Think about learning to walk. The first steps feel unstable, awkward, even frightening. Not because walking is wrong, because your body hasn't learned balance yet. Boundaries work in much the same way. The first honest no often feels deeply uncomfortable. Not because you've done something harmful, because you've interrupted a pattern that once kept you emotionally safe. Your nervous system needs time to learn that honesty does not automatically lead to rejection. That lesson cannot be learned through reading, only through experience. Each time you respectfully decline something that violates your limits and discover that the world doesn't collapse, your brain quietly updates its prediction. Maybe I can disappoint someone and still be worthy of love. That single realization has the power to reshape an entire personality. This is where spiritual traditions quietly intersect with psychology. Many of them speak about truth as though it were something sacred, not because truth is always comfortable, but because every false version of yourself requires constant effort to maintain. Imagine wearing clothes that don't fit. At first, they're merely uncomfortable. After years, you forget comfort even exists. Then one day, you finally wear something that truly fits. It feels unfamiliar, almost strange, not because it's wrong, because you've grown accustomed to discomfort. Authenticity often feels exactly like that, unfamiliar before it feels freeing. Perhaps this explains why so many people confuse guilt with growth. The old identity interprets every healthy change as danger, but growth almost always feels uncertain before it feels natural. This is why courage is not the absence of fear. It is choosing truth while fear is still present. Little by little, something remarkable begins to happen. You stop measuring your worth by how available you are. You stop believing love must be earned through constant usefulness. You begin noticing your own emotions before everyone else's. You pause before automatically saying yes. For the first time in years, you ask yourself a simple question: what do I actually want? That question sounds ordinary. It isn't. For someone who has spent a lifetime organizing their life around other people's expectations, it is revolutionary, because every authentic life begins there. Not with certainty, with honesty. The irony is that many people fear boundaries will make them less loving. The opposite is usually true. Relationships built on obligation become fragile. Relationships built on honesty become resilient. The people who truly care about you may feel disappointed from time to time, but they will also begin knowing the real you. Not the version who constantly smiles. Not the version who never asks for anything. Not the version who quietly disappears behind everyone else's needs. The real you. And that is the only version capable of genuine intimacy. Perhaps this is why the guilt begins to fade. Not overnight, not all at once, but each time you choose authenticity over automatic approval, the old fear loses a little more of its power. Until one day, you say no. You feel the familiar discomfort arise. You notice it. You breathe. You allow it to exist without obeying it. And then something extraordinary happens. The guilt passes, but your self-respect remains. Maybe that was the lesson hidden inside the word no all along. It was never meant to separate you from others. It was meant to reconnect you with yourself. Because every meaningful yes in life depends on the courage to say no when your soul quietly whispers, "Not this time."